Hello, happy hump day, and welcome to another episode of Electricpreneur Secrets, the Electricians Podcast. If you haven't heard, we come here in this crazy place live on Facebook and then put this whole thing into a podcast for your viewing and listening pleasure to help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service. Did I get enough energy in that one today, Joe?
I loved it. The cadence was on point. The maestro was conducting in the background. It was just, love it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. In all honesty, like I love working on process. And I've got some things that are coming on in our process in the next few weeks that are just going to be so awesome. So I'm like chomping at the bit to let it release. So I'm feeling really good. I'm living passionately right now.
Well, here's your segue because I think a part of my energy today is actually waking up with some da 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 Folgers in my cup and going to your class where you guys were working on, or we were working on today, that options deep dive. Can you give us a couple of nuggets about it? What was that
Sure,
class
yeah.
really about?
So options are a very wide topic that not a lot of people have enough understanding about, right? So it's one thing for me to tell you, you need to do 6 options. And you know what? You might listen and just say, okay, it says do 6 options, I'll do 6 options. The point of today's lesson was not only why we're doing 6 options, but I actually took every current style that is in the industry right now and I compared them side by side. I was like, this is what you do when it's only a one call and you have only one option. Here's with 3 options. Here's with 3 options in the modified. Here's in hybrid 6 options. Here's a massive 6 options. Here's our version of 6. So the benefit of going through it was that by the end of that class, people knew why they were doing it. And when you know the why, you are that much more capable of modifying and pivoting in the field.
Wow. That sounds valuable, man.
Mhm.
Just so people know, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, God, I wish I could get my hands on that, just to even understand what the hell you guys are talking about with 6 options all the time, it
Mhm.
could be valuable and you could get your hands on it. All you've got to do is reach out. So if you're not already with us in the Facebook group, Engaging Live and VIP, you could be there. Even if you don't have a Facebook account, maybe you've let that thing slide for a while. If you're an electrician, electrical contractor, Facebook could be a big chunk of leverage for you. So I'd encourage you just
Mhm.
to grab that account, open it back up, whatever, join our crew on Electricpreneur Secrets, the Electricians Podcast community. If you're still hesitant to do that, I actually received an email last night as I was crawling into bed, Joe, that
Really? You're
literally
checking your
said this.
emails as you're getting into bed?
I know, I know. I was trying to put my phone in sleep, and oh, man, some nights it doesn't stop till 10, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Right? Electricpreneurs, you guys know the feeling here. It happens.
Mhm.
But the last email I saw, it could have been clickbait, I swear. It said, gosh, you're hard to find. I was like, what? Me? Really? And when I noticed it was from LinkedIn, I was like, what? And so I actually clicked on it, and it's one of our followers who doesn't use Facebook. It's like, man, I just want to talk to you. I want some help. We got this little business going. Everything's going great, but we could use more help with that and growing that sales process. And so it was kind of a reminder that, hey, man, you really got to make sure all these links are open. You got to make sure that you can be easy to find. And also a reminder to you guys that Facebook can be leveraged and you could find us right here and be with us every day of the week chatting as Jason is. And he says, hey, I'm working on becoming my small town authority on electrical solutions as a full-time job. Jason's
A freaking
absolutely
men,
killing it.
Jason. Amen to that, man.
All right. So transitioning Joe, I want to tell you something personal, very personal that you have not heard before.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
listening.
I had to leave the sales class early.
I noticed that,
Yeah.
but I never asked why.
I
What's
did
going
a
on?
podcast interview. It was finally time on the Startup
Nice.
Shit Show. And if you've heard my interview, guys, way back, like we were in the 30s or 40s, we did our interviews
Mhm.
episode. That is not the decades. We're not that old. But way back then, we did our interviews. If you've heard me there, then you know that my professional career did not start strong. Started in business, had a big fail, and today I got to talk about that. But I also got to talk about the first floor of business. Do you know what I'm saying when I say the first floor of business? Do you know what I'm talking about?
So whenever I hear the first floor of business, what I understand is the needs of business, like where business needs to start and where it like where the door opens and you walk right into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so, referencing even Mike Michalowicz in his book, I Need to Fix This Next,
Mhm.
first floor would be sales. But
Yeah.
sales actually includes that customer value proposition. In other words, your offer, the price of that
Mhm.
offer, how you market that offer, and how you conduct that exchange. So,
Mhm.
marketing, sales, pricing, they're all part of the bottom floor. But, Joe, imagine an electrical company that had those three things figured out. What could you be working on then?
So realistically, if you had all your sales processes in place, I mean, then that's actually a huge superpower. Because even if you had nothing else in place, you know that money can still come in, and money is oxygen to a business. So, really, what you're doing is it doesn't matter what you need to work on, you have the time and the capital to make that happen.
100%. I love that. And often I'll actually do this exercise with people when we get on calls. I'll just ask them, what is your worst case scenario? I've got great news for electricians. Your worst case scenario is shutting the doors, reopening them tomorrow, and grabbing a demand call. Because as we've been talking about on the group, in our Facebook pages and posts this week, is all about
Mhm.
demand calls. And today we're talking about why demand calls may be the most important sale that you can
Mhm.
make and that you have locked down in your company. And it's for
Mhm.
this reason. We've been calling it demand call lotto. Why would we
Mhm.
call it demand call lotto? Like it's a lottery, Joe.
Well, the thing is, when you present six options, we have a complete range of two premium to mid range and two economy. It's meant to establish the widest range from the finest the customer could buy to the most bare bones economical they can take. Now, the lotto is that really the only people that take the top option are in the top 15%. But when they take that option, it is absolutely massive. So, like a personal experience was I went on a call once to change a light bulb on a demand call.
Mm-hmm.
The customer took my top option and invested in a generator system. That's hitting the lotto. So, these situations happen, but they would never happen if you can't run the play and at least put it in their corner.
Absolutely. And you know what? It reminds me of even a recent win that we had shared in our program where Alan said, "Hey, his top sales guy did a demand call. I can't remember what it was, but I've got the win beside me from a simple demand call. Hey, come fix this. Something's wrong. We need to work on the
Mhm.
definition here with these guys for a minute today. Make sure they understand. So something's not right. Please come help." It's basically a sale in the bag, but it's
No.
not often a big sale in the bag. And that's the point. We should really have that
Mhm.
figured out. Well, congratulations to Alan and his guy because they cranked out, turned a maybe a couple $100 ticket into a $5,300 gold sale. Do you remember
That's what I'm
Alan
talking
talking
about.
about that?
Yeah, no, I was really proud of him about that. And Alan never ceases to impress me. And if you're listening to it, man, got nothing but love for you. But the main reason why that success is happening is it's a commitment to the process. It's
Mm,
saying we're going to take the play. We know the play to run. The coach just said, here's a play, get on the field and do it. And they do it. And because they have good leadership and they have the right direction and they're moving the ball on the right edge of the field, they're able to get more wins than if they were just free balling it.
yeah, 100%. I love that. So we know what the demand call is. We know that it can be powerful. Relating it now to
Mhm.
what we're saying, demand call lotto. I just love this expression. Hashtag demand call lotto, by the way, guys. If you have a demand call that turns up a bit bigger, we'd love to hear it too. So please
Yeah.
hashtag that one and we'll get to see it as well. Post it in our group, post it in the chat right here, right now, if you're with us.
Mhm.
But what would you say? You know what? Let's really crank into these main advantages. And I want to start with
Okay.
conversions.
Okay.
Do demand calls convert more than opportunity calls where someone's just shopping for a quote?
Significantly, yes.
Okay. Now, then if we can get more demand calls,
Mhm.
we're going to feel that there's a guarantee around a higher conversion because it really needs to be done today,
Ideally, yes.
most times, right?
Mhm.
But if most of your competition, other electricians in the area, are also maybe getting tired, fatigued by the $189 diagnostics, or worse, maybe it's under 100. Maybe they're doing an $89 diagnostic. They go
Uh,
there, run the 15-minute play, and they're like, insert value where? Pay for what? And you end up in this awkward situation of the
mhm.
client feeling they overpaid and you feeling you underserved.
Yep.
Have you ever seen that with contractors, Joe?
Yeah, a lot of times, one specific example comes up where we would get calls because customers would say, "Hey, I had my HVAC company come out and they say that I have no power to my furnace and I need to take a look at it." And I show up and my first thought is naturally run the play. We're going to look at the panel. So I get ready to go down the basement stairs and I notice there's a switch that's off at the top of the stairs. And it says furnace. And my first thought is, well, I know that, but I'm going to keep moving forward and I'm still going to run the play and we'll circle back to this when we get a chance.
Hmm. Interesting. I got to
Mhm.
know why. Is that not now with bad interest in your client that you did that?
Not necessarily. It's actually the exact opposite. I'd like to
Okay.
explain why. So we know, let's take the facts that we have, right? An HVAC company came out. They were technically out there. So we can assume, at least for the most part, that they had someone competent. That's an easy thing to miss, where you're looking and you're saying, like, all right, the switch is off. That's what sends power to the furnace. As an electrician, what would happen if I connected that, just turned it back on, and I hear the furnace come on? I didn't go downstairs. I didn't see anything. I didn't do anything.
And I've personally solved that problem in 30 seconds myself before and
Yeah.
walked right out with no cash, nothing.
But there's some serious danger here
Hmm.
because a lot of times, especially in New York, what we would find is that you would have the new furnace installed, but they wouldn't want to run the new line to the panel. So what they would do is they would run the line to the closest disconnect that was originally dedicated for the furnace. A
Hmm.
lot of times that's an old 2-pole fuse. They literally still have fuse boxes in panels that are still active where I am. So we would go downstairs and I would feel uncomfortable leaving them with a fuse because my logic always was, well, where would you even buy fuses? If it blew, unless you had more, you'd be without power to your heat. If this was winter and you're in the middle of a storm, you need to drive to Home Depot to buy a fuse? What is this, 1970? Like, what are we talking about? So the logic would be I want to serve the client at a better level, not just by solving today's problem, but by ensuring that they don't have a problem tomorrow that I could have prevented today. Would I
100%.
be wrong to want to do that?
Not at all. I don't believe so. I think you've completely flipped that and the ideas that I was having before. I think it's justified. It makes sense. And by following up with the rest of that process, you're also getting to know more about their current experience and other needs, desires, problems that they have as well. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah. So what we're doing is as we go through it, we learn about, well, what else happened? Like, why did you call us in particular? Have you worked with someone else? And if you haven't, if you have worked with someone else, why am I here? Like, if you like their level of service, I mean, how many times have we heard that? Hey, have you ever worked with someone before? Yeah, I got my neighbor. He comes by, he's a retired electrician. He helps me with this all the time. The first thought is, why the hell am I here? If you already have someone that you like that gives you great service, am I stepping on their toes by being here? And the
Hmm.
answer is usually, well, no, he's 78 years old and this is not something he messes with. Or, yeah, he does smaller things, but I don't want to messing with my panel. Or it could be anything. But the fact is that if you don't solve that problem in the beginning, it comes back to bite you during the presentation. When you give them their number and they go, oof, well, I got to see what Ricky Bobby would have charged. I mean, he never did anything like that. And now you have someone where you could have eliminated it earlier by just simply saying, well, I can understand where you're coming from. And it makes sense that he'd be cheaper. But can I ask you a question? When I asked why you chose not to use him in the first place, what did you tell me? Yeah, he's unreliable and doesn't ever show up. Okay. So with that being said, how would you like to proceed? And
Yeah,
now we have the objection handle already done.
100%. I love that. I want to transition here a little bit in just saying that in the deficit of process, what a lot of electricians are doing that we see is then try to leverage their 10-point or their critical visual home inspection at this point
Mhm.
to make up that gap.
Correct.
Can you see the problems with that, Joe? Can we talk a
Yeah.
bit around, because guys, don't get me wrong, those are important inspections to do, but even
Mhm.
myself, I've had a shift in mindset around them for this reason.
Mhm.
When we use it as a crutch here, it can cause some problems. And I think that this really speaks to the line and the two of us,
Correct.
them and us. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Correct. So I'm going to speak outside of our trade just for perspective,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm sure electrician to electrician, it's a little harder to sink in. So let's go outside our trade. Let's say that I'm your plumber, right? And you call me over because your kitchen sink has a clog in it. And then I look at your sink for 2 minutes and then I say, I got to make sure I look at everything else. We actually do a 10-point inspection. So I'm going to check your water heater. I'm going to check your main drains. I'm going to check the attic water flow. I'm going to check the bathrooms. I'm going to check the pressures. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, I've got kitchen sink chowder floating around here. Get that shit out. I don't want to deal with this anymore. You
Yep.
seeing if my water heater has an anode rod does not mean that this is going to fix this problem. So what it usually causes is the customer feeling like you're not doing it to serve them. You're doing it so they serve you.
Mm,
And no one likes being in that situation because it
or dare
feels
I
like you're in a house with someone who's trying to sell you something.
exactly. That's all I was going to say. Or dare I say, sell them, not serve them. How
Mm-hmm.
important. And by the way, like again, this line problem, when you first arrive, I mean, that's a part of how they're making their decision. Yes, they
Mm-hmm.
need someone competent, but they don't want to be sold.
Correct.
In some cases, an educated market, this might be the difference why they might not want to call the bigger franchise electrician or plumber in this example. They
Mm-hmm.
may actually already perceive that and assume that, presume that that's going to happen in this case, just from being a bigger company. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
why is that everyone watches, everyone's heard, everyone's seen the contractor ripoff shows,
Mm-hmm.
stories, the dramas around this, right? The lawsuits around this that fall flat and contractor closes the door and walks away with 250K large in their pocket, essentially, that no one could hold them accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
That is in the back of everyone's mind until
Agreed.
they have a proven trustworthy relationship with an electrician that they trust.
Agreed.
So this line problem is, you arrive, the problem's in the middle, that's what they called for, they're on the other side of the line looking at you thinking, please don't fucking sell me, don't
Mm-hmm.
fucking try to sell me shit, just fix my problem, do it fair, and get out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on the other side going, please don't see me as a fucking salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do the right thing for you. It's for everyone's safety. Yes, it costs a little more, but I'm not a salesperson. I'm an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't everyone experiencing this, Joe?
It would make sense because the thing is, without having a process to run, you're forced to do one thing, and that one thing is very volatile. If you don't have a process, you have to lead with heart. The problem with leading with heart is that when you get shot down, it is very hard to recover from because you can say, here's my process. This is not me. This is the process I'm running. And they say no to the process. And there's almost a shield up like, okay, that part of the process didn't work. But if you say, I'm telling you that I personally believe in this and this is me and I am directly and emotionally connected to this solution, and they tell you to F off, don't sell me nothing. Now I'm sitting there licking my wounds as I walk out to the van. And that's going to affect me on every call I go forward.
100%. I liken this to, especially if you're a leader of other electricians, you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
build up. Again, we're going to reference back to that bottom floor, right? The sales, marketing, and pricing, having these things correct so that we know how to speak to our target audience and create interest in our services, so that we know how to conduct an exchange consistently,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that our pricing supports that being a profitable exchange as frequently as possible, as consistent as possible. Another way to look at this, I like to liken it to the factory, the conveyor belt.
Mm-hmm.
How can we make this as consistent a quality production as what would be on a conveyor belt with gold wrapping and a nice red bow on it?
The funny thing is that when you say conveyor belts, anyone who's ever had to work in a maintenance technician role We're thinking of, I think of the conveyor belts. I'm like, man, these things run until they're torture tested and they never take them down for PMs.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so pulling out of the maintenance brain and thinking about the production brain. So
Mhm.
what's the difference between our business model and theirs? Well, they're going to use a bunch of robotics, automation to create a consistent product with the same price tag on every one, so
Mhm.
that the consumers know exactly what they're purchasing by the time it's on the shelf. Well, our environment's a little more volatile, a little more diverse, right? Than
Mhm.
that, a little more dynamic.
Mhm.
So it's our job to create as consistent of a quality deliverable as possible for as consistent of a price given the environment of the deliverable. Now, maybe I'm in business science jargon mode, but did that make sense, Joe?
I think you should explain a little bit more. The reason being is that I can see some eyes getting a little wide and being like, what?
Okay, fair enough. So, back to our usual lingo around this, that process is what serves us to be able to train our staff so that staff
Bingo.
A does the same thing as staff B, does the same thing as staff C, does the same thing as staff D, given the situations that we need them to act in for us. In
Mhm.
other words, we're trying to productize our service. And the only difference between them should not be the approach that they take, but the skill levels that they're at with the strengths and vulnerabilities that they have. Being a
Mhm.
great leader in service means understanding those people, what motivates them, the strengths and their weaknesses, and being able to coach them through that so that they can rise up and keep going through the levels that a tech should.
Mhm.
Demand call being the basic sales operation, right back to our point here.
Mhm.
If you're putting your people out there without a process, something that truly guards them, as Joe said, from that hard heart blow, then I liken this to pushing your people out in a crosswalk on a red light and hoping they all handle traffic the same way. And
Can I add to that?
if I can throw one more thing in because it's so important,
Mhm.
if you're doing that, it's only a matter of time before this turns into the dad teenager environment where something's wrong and you can't figure out what, and they're acting out in ways that do not actually spell out exactly what's wrong. But I'm telling
Mhm.
you, the problem is they're out in a fucking red light right now.
Mhm. So I wanted to add one thing to you, and forgive me for interrupting.
No, not
The
at all.
logic that I wanted to add was it's not just pushing them out into the sidewalk. That actually would be even a lighter version because technically you had your eyes to still see the other side of the road. They could still see where they're trying to get to. When you're sending them out without a process, all they know is go out there and get a sale. They're literally being pushed out into an intersection with a blindfold on, with
Mm,
a braille stick that they're just trying to feel their way to the other side.
right.
That's why process is so important because it gives you a roadmap, a replicatable roadmap that you can train and process off of.
Yep.
So I just wanted to
Absolutely.
put a little more perspective into it, if that's
No,
okay.
that's great. I appreciate that. So I want to go a step further then. Okay, so what makes the demand call so important? Because as a service electrician, things go wrong and we need that. That's the entire serviceability factor.
Mhm.
But before perfecting this trade, this art, electricians just maintain that, hey, another one won't be needed for 5 to 7 years in this house on average.
Mhm.
If that's true, if no relationship is built and they won't have someone else for 5 to 7 years, then it only makes sense that we serve them at the highest level today, that we get all of that out. And all of
Mhm.
that doesn't come in a conduit, rigid or EMT. It comes in a conversation, in
Mhm.
communication and process. That's how we find out what people's needs are, not by systems analysis, not by inspecting in tech brain. Go ahead, Joe.
So even more so, a lot of times when people go into it, we have to remember. First off, I love the conduit analogy. I thought that was
Nice.
really, really cool.
Just stitch that
But
one together now.
it's awesome. But the thing is that it's even more so because we won't see them for the next 5 to 7 years. So I'd like to speak to an electrical technician right now. Just
Sure.
in your mind, you're the one who's on the tools.
Let's do it.
You show up and you physically see that it could be anything. Dimmer switch is getting hot, right? You know what it is. It's just a knob. You can change out that dimmer switch, and now suddenly the system should work, right? But will it work pain free without any issues for the next 5 to 7 years?
Mm-hmm.
How can it? Without understanding the infrastructure surrounding it, you're actually leaving the customer in a situation where they think they're safe and they won't be until something happens. That's the problem. So going into this, not only with the mentality of, yeah, I'm going to serve you now, but I'm going to serve you to such an extent that you'll have the options of not only knowing what could go wrong, but I'm going to let you fix them in today's prices.
Yeah.
And you won't have to take the time off of work. You're not going to have to deal with the downtime. You're not going to deal with the inconvenience. All you'll have to do is know that there's a small monthly amount that you have to go and commit to, and I can prevent this long term. So when you don't have to see me for the next 7 years, it'll be because nothing went wrong.
Yeah, I love that. And all this opportunity comes every week to most of the people listening to us.
Mm-hmm.
These calls are coming in. You can do more to influence this in your marketing as well. And that's another topic that we'll get into maybe even tomorrow. However, just focused on the calls you are getting right now, one of our biggest mottos is making the most of every call, so that we're working to eliminate slow season. We're building a year-round, massive snowball effect, a fortress around making the most of every call. And so here's the importance of the demand call. Immediate cash flow. Sure, maybe it's 150 to 300 bucks. That happens. But if that's happening all the time, this is a problem, because that's not going to float this boat. That's not going to soar your company to the next level. We need to rely on demand calls and those immediate cash injections, because that's really what fills the gaps for us. It helps them at a higher level. In that process, we're able to identify other opportunities that we could revisit, club memberships that we can put people into so that they have enhanced warranties, scheduling, enhanced options, enhanced control. Not only that, but if it turns into the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 sale in Alexi's case, something we mentioned in our post yesterday, $15K on what was expected to be a $200 to $300 call. That's why we call it demand call lotto. And if your company isn't playing demand call lotto, then we've got a problem here, because the choice is going to come down at some point. You're going to go, do we just not run these demand calls anymore? Because every time we go, we're not making anything.
In fact, probably losing money on some of them. You walk away with 150, you pay a tech $50 an hour to go out there and back, plus insurance, plus cost, plus trucks, plus training, plus tools, plus all the other things that add up. And you're sitting there like, why did I even take my time? But if you could get on, like, granted, it is not unbelievable to say that my average ticket on a demand call was $2,500. If you could go to every demand call and expect that amount, would you not be more excited to run those calls?
100%.
That's the point.
100%. And if you were able to frame this for your staff as demand call lottery, literally demand call lotto, wouldn't they get more excited about those times where they cash in and you guys celebrate a special way? Wouldn't that add something to the mix here?
I really
Wouldn't
think it
people
would.
want those calls? Joe, we're running out of time. We got to come up with some action items, and I want to give a big one right here, right now to start us off. Is that okay?
Full steam ahead, good sir.
We just fully analyzed why this demand call is so important, some of the breakdowns that contractors, electrical contractors tend to face in these moments, and some of the reasons we can overcome it. And really, this becomes like the basis for your sales training. Now, we didn't get deep dived into the solutions here today, and we are out of time, but guess what? There is a way for you to get solutions for this. we're on like a content demand call week on Facebook. And all you need to do is come find us in the Electricpreneur Secrets group or look up the Electricians Podcast community. And you're going to be able to chat with us live right there and engage on one of these posts that can get you the demand call value piece to begin to get you out of trouble with this, to help you with that. And that's all free. All you got to do is put your hand up. We'll send it right to you in a message. So that's freaking awesome. And that's your action item if this one spoke to you. Otherwise, if you're not a Facebook fan, you can go to our website at serviceloopelectrical.com, serviceloopelectrical.com, and you can reach us there as well. Not to mention, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment below and we'll respond. But if you're on the Google, Spotify, Apple, iPods, any of that stuff, Facebook is your best bet, but you can also leave us a review there to let us know what you thought. All right, Joe, do you have an all-star action for us?
I would say the all-star action is more of a mentality action, because if you gun to my head, what would I say?
Yep.
I personally believe that demand calls can be very lucrative, but only if you go in with mind like water. Now, what I mean by that is this. When you go in expecting a sale, you can carry yourself a certain way. When you come in expecting there to be no sale, you carry yourself a certain way. I say neither should be the way to go. Instead, I prefer to say, I am going to only focus on how I can build a relationship and serve this client to the absolute apex of my ability right now. The reason being is the all-star salespeople and technicians aren't great at making the options. They're great at making the connections. And when you have a strong connection with someone, the money follows and the satisfaction follows and the repeat business follows. So if you had to focus on one thing today, next time you go to demand call, feel for where they're at. They called you because they didn't have work, because they had to stay home and fix this. Their kids didn't have the sound machine running last night because they had no power. The fridge had gone and spoiled food because they left. They're in a situation. Feel for them as people first, and the sale will follow, because no other contractor is doing it that way.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to add one little quick thing, guys. If you're not sure about the numbers around your demand calls, I encourage you to actually look at all your calls and begin to separate who called me with something wrong. Who were those $100 to $300 tickets? Who are those ones that we could have been playing demand call lotto? Evaluate what those are. How many are we getting a week, a month? How much have we been getting for an average ticket? And what could that be if we were upwards of, like Joe said, averaging $2,000 to $2,500 on these? And I think you'll be surprised to know that that could still include 4, maybe $300 to $500 tickets and one $3,000 to $5,000. And all of a sudden your average is in the middle. That's all it takes is a little demand call lotto, guys. If you aren't playing, I want to know why. Come engage with us in the group. Let us know. I shouldn't say hope. I know this is valuable for some electricians out there. This has been another episode of Electricpreneur Secrets, the Electricians Podcast, where we show up 5 days a week to help you master your sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level electrical service. I am Clay Newmeyer. This is Joseph Lucani, and we cannot wait to see you guys again tomorrow.
Take care, my friends.